Hello, welcome to the channel. Today we're going to talk about OXUS Acquisition Corp. Now, do you guys remember Solid Power? Now, this one was a SPAC that merged, and it was originally Decarbonization Plus Acquisition Corp, and then it became Solid Power. Now remember, before they announced their target, this bad boy was 91 cents, it looks like, or even 80 cents actually. 80 cents back in May, and then they announced their target, went up to $3, kind of came back down, and then it went all the way up to like $5.50 at one point. I mean, the market was slightly different back then, but that was like in December, so only a couple months ago. And then it came back down, but it's still at about $2. So that's more than a 2x. It's almost a 3x from the original 80 cents. Now, this OXUS Acquisition Corp could potentially be similar to that kind of price range. So wouldn't you be stoked if you're able to go back in time and get one of these, some of these warrants? Anyway, let's go over OXUS Acquisition Corp. Alrighty, so OXUS Acquisition Corp is a special purpose acquisition company, and it intends to focus on energy transition technologies in emerging frontier countries. And it raised $172,000 in its initial public offering in September. OXUS. So this company was founded by Kenges Rakishev. I'm going to call him Kenges, although it might be Kenges. I'm going to call him Kenges Rakishev. He's going to be serving as a director and non-executive chairman. He's a global investor and entrepreneur. And he's going to be focusing on acquiring, investing in businesses that can benefit from his group's operating expertise. And this guy has a lot of experience. He's operated, acquired, invested in businesses in metal and mining, oil, banking, fintech, e-commerce, etc., etc. He serves as the chairman of the board of Battery Metals Technology Ltd. And the company is developing a nickel deposit in Kazakhstan and is planning to build a strong portfolio of key battery material globally. So he's already involved with battery metals. So let's just go over this gentleman at first, because he's the director of the company. So a very important person, obviously, if he's directing it. So OXUS Acquisition will be Kenges Rakishev's, they spell it differently on this article, Kenges Rakishev's main tech capital VAT. So the details of this acquisition corp is he's to acquire companies specialized in the red hot area of energy transition, batteries, and EVs. He created it for that reason. He's also heavily involved in modern tech investment scene. He wants to acquire more assets. Let's see, so Kenges, he wants to raise, well, this was before, this was earlier, I guess this was talking about his SPAC in August, right before it IPO'd, so it's in the past, but this is just going over the details of his SPAC. Underwriters are Early Bird Capital and Sova Capital, and he's going to own 94% of the company. So basically, he's creating this thing. He's going to be it's for him. He's going to have a couple other people in line with his company, like his team, but he is going to be the main guy. 94% is going to be his, and then after the IPO, he'll have 19.3%. Here's his. They have very small stakes. The rest of the independent directors, these guys. I'm not going to read the names of all of them, but these are his team. And the interesting part here is, in parallel with the market placement, the founder of OXUS, which is Kenges, will contribute personal funds to the company within the framework of private placement, basically the standard scheme per transaction of SPAC companies. So he's saying here, disclosing that he's, and I also read the SEC filing, and this is also in the SEC filing, he's worded very specifically that he's going to be piping his own SPAC here. So even though it's 177,000 IPO only, he's, we all know that if pipes come in, that really doesn't matter. More money, a lot more money can come in. So he already is basically set up his IPO, and he's planning on piping his own SPAC here. So now this is interesting too. It says that he will acquire OXUS Warrants for $6.15 million. So he's going to be owning a bunch of warrants. Well, now this was before it IPO'd, so he owns 6.15 million warrants right now, or $1 million worth of warrants. So he's holding quite a few warrants, this guy. And OXUS intends to look for objects for acquisition in such segments as energy storage, battery materials, infrastructure for electric vehicles, and names CIS, Southeast Asia, Middle East, and North Africa as its priority regions. He's also holding FinCraft. His holding FinCraft, which is the company FinCraft, owns Battery Metals Technologies Ltd., which plans to produce metals for electric car batteries, and also has investments in a number of startups in the field of energy technologies. So he's already dialed in to this field, and he came up with this SPAC to basically bring a company public. And he knows what he's doing, because I'm going to just go over him some more. So anyway, I'm going to skip on to some recent SEC filings that OXUS has put out within the past month or two. So the first one, it's a 13G. This is just stating they're required to put these out when there's ownership of 5% or more of the company shares by a fund, by any investor. So these hedge funds, when they end up owning more than 5% of the shares of the company, then the SPAC has to put out a 13G. So this 13G, this came out, it was filed December 31st, but that's the date of the event. But it got filed like a couple weeks ago. So it's basically showing that this company, D.E. Shaw Valence Portfolios, LLC, has this amount of shares, 1,280,808, and which is 7.3%. It owns 7.3% of all the shares. Then it basically just repeats that. It's the same company. Yeah. So then I just kind of checked out who this D.E. Shaw is. It turns out that they're a multinational investment management firm based in New York. And they manage 55 billion, 35 billion of which are alternative investments. And in 2018, the Institutional Investor reported that among hedge funds, D. Shaw and Company had delivered the 5th highest returns in the world. So these guys aren't a small little company. This is a major hedge fund. And they own 7.3% of the shares. No, the other one was another 13G, which came out. I think the D.E. Shaw one came out like 3 weeks ago. And then this one came out just a couple weeks ago. This one's for Polar Asset Management Partners. It's another hedge fund. They own close to the same amount, less, 900K shares. So they have 5.13% of the company's shares. So that, I didn't really deep dive into these guys. A little bit. They invest in a lot of like small cap stuff, tech. It looks like. I'm sure they have a wide range, but so they did their research and they bought some of these. So they own 5.13%. Polar Asset Management Partners, another big hedge fund. So let's see. I think those are the only two that they came up with this year. The two. So let's see now. So I could just go over a little bit more about this gentleman Kenges. He's the director. So I pulled up his LinkedIn. So his experience, he is the chairman of the board of directors of FinCraft Holding since May of 2019. And then the managing partner of Singularity Ltd. And that's been since May 2013 to present. And they're a series of investment funds dedicated to assist and support early stage startup technology companies. He has some other things he does. He's the founder and owner of FinCraft Investment House, chairman of the board of directors of SAT and Company, etc., etc. But he has some interesting things going on. Now, I looked up Singularity. He's the man, the main guy for this, and this is basically a VC investment firm, invest in startups, and they're the lead. It's a venture capital investment. Basically, it talks a little bit about what they do. So they forming partnerships. I have a video later on that I'm going to show a little more detailed, but for now, this is the forming partnerships is, I guess, one of the main things they like to do. So they're just talking about that on their website, and they emphasize the development of long-term partnerships from the earliest stages of onwards through constant involvement and provisions of top-level professional support. So they support and they're involved with the companies that they invest in early, and they put StoreDot right here on their website, a video about this, which I'll talk about a little while later. The major connections with StoreDot, which is a battery company in Israel, which is, I believe, ahead of QuantumScape and Solid Power as far as their development. We'll talk about them in a little while, but I believe that's a potential target of OXUS, StoreDot. So also what's neat is StoreDot, they have a lot of reviews, from the some of the companies they invested in, but the CEO of StoreDot, Dr. Doran Meyersdorf, he, on their website, he's talking about how Singularity Team is hardworking, talented, experienced, cooperative, providing great management support and managerial support and advice whenever necessary. So he's just praising them, which is neat. Some of their other companies here too are just talking about Singularity Team, some of the other companies they invested in. This is basically Kenges, the main management partner. It's just talking about him again. Chairman of the board of directors of several large companies, including SAT and Company, Kazakhstan Petrochemicals Industry. He served in several top positions in both public and private sectors. Yeah. I guess he's one of the 50 most influential people in Kazakhstan. Accomplished investor, multiple business interests worldwide. So he's the leader. He's the leader of the company. And let's see. So now I just kind of went into some of the things that Kenges has accomplished as far as other, mergers or other companies that he's worked with, other transactions that's gone through, to see what his experiences is, to see how reputable he is. Because I know this SPAC is out of Kazakhstan, so it's not as mainstream. It's kind of under the radar. But my opinion is that it's all about the director. And so I'm just researching him, and plus he's going to be, I think it said 96 or 94% of the shares, the company is going to be his. So he's obviously in charge for this acquisition company. So I just pulled up that he was his company Net Element and Molin Technologies announced a merger. This was back in June of 2020. I remember that. That was NETE. It was interesting because it's like a payment processing company, but they merged with Molin Technologies. It wasn't a SPAC. Here's more detail. So they announced, this was, a couple months later after that first one, merger agreement with internationally distributed EV company. So NETE, they, Molin Technologies signed definitive merger agreement with NETE. So, they merged, and they did that. Looks like NET brought Molin public. I don't know the term for what kind of merger this. I guess it's just a merger. It's not a SPAC. But Kenges was the one who did this. Kenges, Rakishev's company, Net Element, goes merger with Molin EV. I mean, that company is, like all the EVs right now, they're pretty beat down, but he was able to accomplish that merger, which shows a lot in my opinion. And now I just looked him up to see, who is this guy? Kenges. So it looks like he's the facts about him is he takes the top 5 spots out of 50 influential businessmen in Kazakhstan. In the top 7 spot in annual ranking. He's one of the founders of the global venture fund Singularity Team, a private investment fund that focuses on development of technology-based companies, providing capital and additional supporting services. So he provides the capital and support for these startup companies. And in 2012, he was considered among the world's top 10 private investors. That was 10 years ago. He already was considered top 10 private investors by the amount of investments made. And then we already talked about that. He's the board of directors for several large companies, including SAT and Company, diversified industrial holding and benefiting from Keen's leadership. Just kind of some detailed stuff. Oh, there's the chairman of Net Element. I believe he's not anymore. This is a little bit older detail on him. But anyway, that's what I found. Then I looked into him a little more to see what because he's talking about he's being really involved with the company for battery metals. So Kenges Rakishev owns a license to mine nickel and cobalt deposits in the east of Kazakhstan. He firmly believes in the bright future of the so-called battery metals and pays attention to his new company, Battery Metals Technology. So he owns this company, Battery Metal Technology. I believe in 2019 is when he acquired that. And so it's going to be nickel and cobalt. And basically it just talks about that company and a little bit of other stuff that he does. But he has that asset for a nickel cobalt mining asset. Okay, here's an interview about him talking about Battery Metals Technologies. And I'm not going to play it, but he's just talking about well, we can watch the beginning.
Thinker of Resources own company, and this is the largest deposit of the nickel and cobalt in Kazakhstan. We have proven reserves of the 1 million ton of the nickel and approximately 80 or 100,000 tons of the cobalt. We are trying to build kind of a new industry for Kazakhstan, and we know that China wants to build a big factory to produce electric vehicle. Big conglomerate already decided to go and produce 100% electric vehicle. The new industry is coming here, is the industry of the electric vehicle battery. And if we will be pioneer here and we can build some stable production, we can build something that will be the, let's say, strategic reserves. We focus into to build their big production. We focus into do successful IPO of this mine, and after we will finish, definitely we will start another level. Maybe it's a production of the battery in Kazakhstan, but for the moment we will focus in just to start produce chemical, metals. This is real, innovative and
Anyway, so it sounds like he has big plans for that mine and even talking about eventually producing the batteries. Okay, so that's one of his investments. And it sounds like he wants to bring it IPO through Hong Kong exchange. It hasn't happened yet. Let's see. So this is just kind of a review of the details of the OXUS acquisition. I just wanted to pull up the dates. So this thing IPO'd in September 2nd, 2021. So I read through the SEC filing and it has 2 years. Honestly, it could be 18 months, but I'm 99% sure, I don't have it right here, that it is 2 years from the date of IPO for them to find a target. So we're still really early. It's only been, 5 months? A little more than 5.5 months since this thing IPO'd. So it's still more than, I mean, if it's 18 months, it's still 13 months from that. I think it's 2 years, so we have more than a year and a half for them to find a target. We're not anywhere near expiration of that, and I know right now the market is not ideal, but we have plenty of time. So that's good. It's early. And then this is just the detail, a little more of the blank check company. Oh yeah, and it's 1-to-1. So for every unit, I mean, you get, for one warrant will buy you 1 share. That's in the SEC filing. I don't have it right here, but it's 1-to-1. So let's see. It's saying a similar thing. The company aims to leverage management's experience in the energy sector to target energy transition technologies, including battery metals, energy storage, EV infrastructure, and advanced recycling. OXUS Acquisition will focus its efforts in emerging regions including CIS, South and Southeast Asia, and MENA. Okay. And yeah, and it's Early Bird Capital and Sova Capital, joint book runners. Let's see, what else did I find? Okay, so I just went into some kind of older things that he did to see like his history of how he does transactions and how he moves his money around. Very interesting. So this was in 2019 where they're talking about Kenges, but Kazakh tycoon sells Petropavlov's stake to focus on battery minerals. So he owned this... He sold his stake in gold miner Petropavlov's to Russian billionaire. So he sold his, he had a bunch of shares in, he was I guess he was probably the biggest shareholder before, and he sold his shares of this gold miner in order to focus on battery minerals. So he already had his scope where he needed capital, and he sold his shares to generate capital for his next venture. He pulled out of this this gold miner, and that was that same one we watched on that battery metals, the little interview thing. It's a cobalt and nickel project. And I'm just watching the timeline. So then a bit later, I think about a year later after that article, Kazakh businessman Kenges Rakishev to invest US $1.5 billion in largest cobalt nickel field in the country. So that's just showing that he pulled his money, and then he already had his plan, and he bought this mine. Battery Metals Technologies is controlled by Kazakhstan businessman Kenges, investing $1.5 billion. So he made it happen here. It says part of the plans of the company is launching the production in 2023, bringing it to 20 tons of nickel and up to 1.5 tons of cobalt by 2039, speculation. But he has big plans for this. And he spent bank on it and got it going. So that's in the works. I guess that's one of his big projects right now. And he's talking about bringing that company IPO. I guess he filed for an IPO of like in through Hong Kong exchange, and it's still processing. So I guess it's getting reviewed. It hasn't been approved yet. So I'm not sure exactly how it works. If you can IPO in Hong Kong and also do a SPAC. I doubt. I'm not sure. Maybe he'll be trying to do that through his SPAC, OXUS. Kind of interesting. I'm not exactly sure, honestly, how that works. If you can IPO in through a different exchange and then still make a public company through the NASDAQ with a SPAC additional or some offshoot of that. Very interesting. Either way, he has some sort of plan for this OXUS, which I cannot quite figure out exactly if that would be doable or if it's going to be StoreDot. But this guy's dialed in. He has a lot of things going on. He has a lot of connections. He's in all sorts of plays. So let's see, what else have we found? Okay, so here, now this is very interesting to me, just kind of seeing what his patterns are, what we just saw before where he sold a stake, he sold his whole stake of gold, that gold mine, to buy the battery metals. Now, this is a similar pattern. This article was written like a month ago, in January 11th, 2022. So Kenges Rakishev sold major stake of the Seaport Vidino to a strategic investor. So he basically had this Seaport stake. Man, this guy has so many investments going on. So he basically sold this in order to generate capital. It doesn't say, like the other article said, why he sold it, what it was his capital, what it was used for. This one, he doesn't comment on the amount of transaction and did not disclose the buyer. Only to comment that the new owner has considerable experience in managing large construction. He doesn't really say why he sold it. I read through this article. He did profit on it, it looks like, majorly, but he didn't say like what he's going to do with his funds or why. Very interesting. He's not disclosing that on this article, so he has something up his sleeve, but he can't say. And it's interesting because this article is actually written. He has like his own website. This Kenges Rakishev Press is it looks like his own press. Like he puts out his own articles through that, because a lot of them look like he even wrote them. The way he words it, or maybe he didn't, but they're very partial to like what he wants to tell the public. And I believe that he wrote this article, or he paid someone to write it. It's all just very praising him. You know, they're interesting how they're worded. Very informational though. That's his website. You could go on to this Rakishev.press and there's all sorts of articles. You know, it's all about him. Basically anything he does gets press. So like for example, we'll merge into the little StoreDot speculation now. I mainly wanted to go over all the things that happened since last video that was made by Octo Money Multipliers, and kind of just talk about the new things that I found since then, and kind of also summarize some of the stuff that I'm sure he already talked about on that video. Shout out to Octo. So let's see. I think he was the only one to ever cover this on a video. So it's super under the radar still. I found something else interesting that I want to include right here. Let's go back. So I've been checking this their website. This is the official OXUS Acquisition Corp website. Like maybe every couple weeks, I'll just look for any updates, anything interesting on here, finding some clues or anything that they've moved forward. And I think within the past week, might have been the past 2 weeks, they this dude right here was not. This was their team here. It's been on their team ever since the filings. This the management and independent directors, all the same as what they filed on since July. But this guy, okay, here we go. This guy right here, Cooper Morgenthau, he was added within the past 2 weeks to this website. I could be wrong. I might have not checked it for like 3 weeks, but I'm pretty sure it's been 2 weeks. These weeks are moving fast, though, as you know. But anyway, I read through this guy's kind of bio, and it's very interesting. So he most recently was a vice president of M. Klein & Company, an investment bank with a global strategic advisory practice. While the M. Klein & Company was instrumental to the formation and initial public offering of Churchill Capital Corp., a special purpose acquisition corp sponsored by M. Klein & Company, and he played a key role in the SPAC's business combination with Clarivate Analytics. So this was like probably one of the first Churchill Capital SPACs in 2019. And as you know, Churchill Capital is what merged with Lucid. And I can't remember the one before that, but so he, I think it was Multiplan, CCX. Anyway, but it's really neat that this guy, Cooper, was brought on to OXUS in the past couple weeks, and he used to work as the vice president with M. Klein for CCIV. He was like the vice president of CCIV, or not CCIV, but of Churchill Capital. Very interesting. They brought him on. It's just very interesting that this guy is now, they call him expert. They don't title him, but he's one of their experts. So he's a consultant or independent director. Probably independent director. It doesn't say exactly. I guess he's just a consultant, but he's part of their team for OXUS Acquisition Corp. So that's new. Interesting. What else? Okay, so Keen's on his website. I mean, he's posting all sorts of things about StoreDot constantly, and not just a quick tweet or something. He's writing long-winded articles on, what they're doing, any update on any technology breakthrough, any more business combo they've gotten, and he basically just talks about them constantly on Twitter and on LinkedIn. He writes articles about them, and on his Keen's Rakishev Press, he's always going over them. This is just an example, one of the articles talking about the project. He's very involved with this project. I pulled up a video which summarizes a lot more, like how he began with StoreDot. Apparently he was the very first investor before they were even a company, when they were just doing research at the very, very early stages of starting their company, and he was right there with them. So here's a video. I'll just show the beginning of it, and it's easier than explaining it. It's about a minute long, so let's pull it up here. He's talking about like all his different, this is his Singularity team. So Singularity team is the company that that he's a founder of, investment VC firm, and they're the ones that invested in StoreDot and a lot of other companies, and they're one of the main investors. So at the early stages, like funding, they put a lot of funding in. I should actually have all of how much funding they did. It's up there with all. I think it's one of the highest as far as all the companies that funded StoreDot, they've put in, I believe, the highest amount of funding. I don't have that right here, but I researched that a while back, and it looked like Singularity for each round, like there'd be a funding round, and I think out of like maybe 50 or 60% of the funding rounds, they were always one of the ones to kick in more. It wasn't just the first time. They're listed with BP and Samsung, a couple different, I believe Samsung, I know for sure BP, some different part they invested in the StoreDot for the funding rounds, and Singularity is in there, I think, almost each time. But here's the video which just summarizes everything about their kind of partnership, it sounds like. Here we go.
Also trying to help.
Let's start over right here. Sorry.
If we will find some synergy between this project, we also trying to help them to create more value from this synergy.
On the left is Kenges, and that's the CEO of StoreDot. On the right, Doran.
They come to us, to Singularity in first fund, just as an idea. Two professors, Mr. Meisdorf told us that I have an idea, and
there's
I can
a CEO. There's Kenges on the right.
Technology can change the world, and we can create a battery which will be charging for the 30 seconds. We invested $500,000. StoreDot already, I can tell, unicorn, approximately $1 billion valuation, but they're creating now completely new product, is a battery for the car. So for that moment, when they came to us as idea, it was for mobile industry. Now mobile industry is changing, so they focusing more to the car industry. They have everything, all, let's say, ingredients of that. They have good investor, and most important, they have a successful and very experienced team. The main two topics is security and
I think then he goes on to talk about some other companies they're invested in, but very interesting how it sounds like they were the first ones that, like at the very beginning, they said that StoreDot was just an idea, and then they supported them. Singularity funded them to start. They were the first funding for StoreDot, and you can see he was in there with them doing different tests in the lab and right next to the CEO. I mean, he basically looks like they're friends. I mean, he's right there with them. So, and that was back in 2012. So it's been 10 years where he's been supporting that StoreDot project. He obviously is very interested in that project. So he would probably love to be on that board, at least like on the board for StoreDot, or own part of it. He would love to be. That would be probably his dream. But anyway, that's a lot of speculation, but he seemed very connected to that company. What else have I found? So I'll just talk a little more about StoreDot, just the timeline. So StoreDot, this article took place in end of September of 2021. They announced investment partner Yasma Group expanding presence in Asia. So this Yasma Group basically had a partnership with StoreDot, and they bring global multi-sector expertise and provide StoreDot with a significant opportunity to engage with key automotive manufacturers in South Korea and across Asia. So that's a key partnership that took place. This Yasma Group, big entity, dialed in, like a conglomerate for Asia, and they're teamed up there. That was in September though. And I was just researching a little bit about, they spelled it wrong, Yamza. I thought it was Yasma. Yasma. They spelled it wrong later in the article. Anyway, this company actually piped a SPAC. Yasma Group piped this kind of under the radar medical SPAC. It took place in Israel. So StoreDot's in Israel, but basically this Tau Medical, Yasma Group invested in it and piped it. And it looks like in June of 2021, July of 2021. So they, this startup, oncology startup, therapeutic startup, it's a $1 billion valuation, and it says, so Yasma Group, right here, pipe deals anchored by healthcare-focused financial strategic investors include Yasma Investment Company, part of Yasma Group Korea. So the same basic group, maybe a different branch of the same main company as the one that invested with StoreDot, or teamed up with StoreDot. So interesting kind of timeline. They were already invested in this company, it looks like, and then they piped when they went SPAC. So now they're invested and partnered with StoreDot. So who knows? They'd be a potential company that would be able to pipe them if they do go, merge via SPAC. And it might, if it's with OXUS, then that would be some more money to bring up to the valuation. So that's a potential, just kind of a interesting speculation. And then, well, this is just kind of the same speculation. Does Kenges Rakishev plan to disrupt battery technology with the OXUS target? This is written by a gentleman named Larry Raymer, kind of a very experienced writer, tech writer, financial journalist, writing for NASDAQ.com, and Larry basically talked about the whole thing about the connection with Kenges, Rakishev, and OXUS. Very good catch by Larry. I'd like to give a shout out to Larry. Very well written article, the one I read about it, and he went through a lot of good information. So basically, furthermore, it is advanced talks with multiple automakers, British Petroleum. So these are just the partners of StoreDot. So they're dialed in. I mean, they're partnered with BP, Samsung, TDK, Daimler. They're all invested in StoreDot. I mean, those are major, all the battery players. Samsung, TDK, BP is like gas, but they're trying. I mean, they gotta pivot. So they've been invested with StoreDot since the beginning, I believe, too. But not. I think they came after Singularity as far as their funding. And then it just talks about that Early Bird Capital is the underwriter, and they've done Tattooed Chef, Velodyne, and Microvast. So, reputable underwriters. And so if it does not merge with StoreDot, there's a great chance this SPAC will find a target. Greatly excites investors. A lot of keywords there to make it sound good, but I'm just trying to go neutral on this and just read through the evidence. But it is true to me. I do agree that this gentleman has a plan, Kenges, and he came up with a SPAC he has a purpose there. Let's see, what else can we go through? A little more. It's just the timeline with StoreDot. So battery developer StoreDot raises $80 million in Series D funding. This was about a month ago. So they did another funding round, for 80 million. And they just talk about a little bit of the detail. Vin Group, BP Ventures, and Golden Energy. Golden Energy, I believe, yes. So they've been doing a partnership with Eve Energy, StoreDot, which is basically a company in China that they've been working on building the cells, like in China, like ramping up the production of these extreme fast charging battery cells. And so Eve Energy, I'm 99.9% sure that that Golden Energy is like the main guy from Eve Energy's VC fund, and so they're investing in them, which makes sense. They're all connected, and BP and this new Vin Group. So they all went in on the round, the series funding. According to StoreDot, its research and development efforts will be geared towards its silicon, extremely fast charging, and its extreme energy density solid state cells. So the money will go into that, and its California-based research and development center. So that's another thing that came out about a month or two ago, where they didn't say where in California, but they basically have a research and development center in California, StoreDot. So they're getting more and more kind of spreading their wings, and they have a research center in California. And it's just the funding will help to scale up to mass production, and wants to get these mass produce these extreme fast charging battery cells by 2024, which I believe is a couple years before all of its competitors, at least a year faster than solid state, I want to say. There used to be a chart that shows the comparison of QS, QuantumScape, and then what's the first one we talked about? The Solid Power, QuantumScape, and StoreDot. And according to my research, StoreDot is ahead of them. Those two are already public, and StoreDot is still in these early stage funding rounds. They had an article speculating that they were going to be going public via SPAC like in March of last year, and they didn't. And then after that, a couple months later, OXUS came out with its IPO, and then since then, it's just everything's been stalled out. You know, we all know the market's been not good for SPACs recently, so things are delayed, in my opinion. But you know, they got their little bit of funding here, so they're probably not in a huge hurry to go public. But a lot of times I've noticed that these articles come out a month or two before they do start. Bloomberg starts coming up with these, announcements that they're in talks or even LOIs. So this is kind of a good sign that they're getting their valuation going. They're getting a little more money to keep their project going, and they're getting ready for something, in my opinion. So that's that timeline. And then, yeah, this is the valuation. So the fast charging battery startup StoreDot hits 1.5 valuation in Series D. So this is just an extension of that article we just read. So that the other one said 80 million. That, you know, some of these articles they mess up the numbers. I believe this is the same round, but they just threw in a 60 million on the article. Maybe the other one was 80. It's the same date pretty much. January 22nd. That was in January 12th. So I believe that this is the same round. It's just, yeah, because they talked about VinFast on that last article. So it's probably only 60 million, because C-Tech is more reputable, I believe, than that article that I just pulled up. So they pulled up 60 million, it looks like. I could be wrong. I mean, it was either 80 or 60, but it brought their valuation to 1.5 billion. So that's their valuation right now if they go public. What else? It's about it right now. This is that solid power again. So anyway, thank you for watching this whole video. And I just wanted to go over the updates on OXUS Acquisition Corp. It's under the radar right now, and you know how SPACs right now are very beat down, and I am excited that I know about this SPAC, and after reading all about Kenges, I'm confident in what he's going to do. And he owns, you know, more than $6 million worth of warrants, and he is dialed in with the industry, be it StoreDot or the mining company he owns. He already brought Mullen public, and he's connected. So I feel that I mean I put some of my money in on this gentleman, what he's doing, and I believe warrants are like 30 cents. No, I think about some, like on Friday somehow they shot up to 40 cents. Like, so I don't know if somebody knows something, or it's just, it seems interesting that they were like sitting at 30 cents for the past month or so, and then all of a sudden they're jumping up again. So, you know, they'll probably come back down a bit, but yeah, they're at the floor. I mean, there's no floor on warrants, but the invisible floor. I'm stoked on this. So anyway, I'm not a financial advisor. I just wanted to go over the detail of this. I hope you guys enjoyed this review, and take care. Thank you very much. Cheers.